Welcome back to another impactful episode of the PSD podcast. I am here, your favorite host, Craig King. I usually say, I don't know what I'm talking about, y'all. I don't know.
It's just one of those days, Craig. It's been a long fall.
It's been a long fall.
Yeah, but we're still here.
I'm not editing that out. We're going to keep that in there.
No, that's real journalism right there.
There you go. No editing in there. But Patrick, your favorite guest is here, everyone. Give him a round of applause. I forgot which button it is, Patrick.
That's okay. That's okay. We will get back.
Yeah.
The session is coming. We will have all the bells and whistles ironed out.
I'll have them identified.
That's right.
I'll have little sticky notes on the board here.
Yep.
So post-election, let's jump right into it.
Yeah. I mean, it has been the topic of conversation for 4 or 5 months now. I mean, Election day, especially if your job is tied to the election, it's kind of like the adult version of Christmas. You get all excited for it and you build up to it, and then it happens and you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, it's over. And so here we are on the other side of it, and it is over, and it is a sudden stop, and it's a hard pivot to what comes next. And there's going to be some significant consequences and impact on policymaking in South Carolina and nationally from what we saw last week during the election.
Yeah. So, I think you would have to be under a rock to not kind of see the buzz online and what we've seen online from not just teachers, but just general public about some of the potential policies that may be enacted that could affect education on a federal level. So let's talk about what we've seen about the Department of Education.
I mean, so it's getting a lot of attention. It's really interesting because, like, in the presidential debate between Vice President Harris and former and future President Trump, K-12 education wasn't really mentioned at all. In the vice presidential debate, really the only reference was around school safety issues. So for a topic that didn't get a lot of play and traction in the presidential campaign, it's certainly getting a disproportionate amount of attention in the aftermath of the election, and most of it hinges on the very public statements made by incoming President Trump and his supporters about a desire to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education, which is not a new policy concept. I mean, this is something that every Republican president since Reagan has alluded to now, and President Trump in his first term actually had a proposal to not eliminate the department outright so much as enfold it with the Federal Department of Labor and create effectively a Department of Labor in the workforce. So that this is not a new concept, but I think what's given it some momentum is the fact that the Republican Party was extremely successful in national political elections. They obviously won the White House. They're going to win pretty solid control of the U.S. Senate. It looks like they're going to have 52 votes. Plus, you would then have Vice President Vance as the tiebreaker. So that's a pretty solid margin.
Yep.
And as of the time of recording this, we're recording it on November 12th. It's not official yet which party controls the House of Representatives, but it seems to be trending toward Republicans maintaining control. Now, it'll be a narrow margin, whichever party controls the House, but it would appear to be a Republican majority. So this idea is certainly getting a lot of attention because the politics would seem to be leaning toward a scenario where the Republican Party controls all three of the elected branches of the federal government.
So to, I guess, a teacher or public education supporter, let's talk about kind of, I guess, what we've heard is what I've seen was the worry about students with disabilities and making sure that those protections that are there are still there. And so I think that's been kind of the bane of a lot of people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I got an email yesterday from a member who is a special ed teacher asking, like, what does that mean? Do special ed teaching jobs disappear if the department disappears? And there's a couple things to peel back here. And this is one of those points where I will lean in on the fact that I worked in the U.S. Department of Education in Washington for a 12-month period, 6 months under President Obama, 6 months under President Trump. So I've literally been in the proverbial belly of the beast. And I think that this is one of those policy concepts where the devil in the details really matters.
Absolutely.
eliminate the Department of Education is a really good campaign bumper sticker.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't tell you a lot, because the department at its core, and this is true of every federal agency, they exist to implement and execute federal law. That's their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So the laws that are being implemented by the U.S. Department of Education, the Individuals with Disabilities with Education Act, IDEA, that is the underlying linchpin of special education in this country. Title I, the primary funding mechanism for students that are in poverty. These kind of federal programs exist independent of the department. The department is simply the delivery mechanism for those. So if the department is eliminated, which is an if, it's not as simple as a president waving a wand. A Congress creates an agency by law. So it would take law to remove an agency, and it would take budgetary action, because right now there's a line item in the federal budget for a Department of Education. Congress controls the budget. They would have to zero out the budget to eliminate the department and its associated positions. So even if you get past all those multiple levels of legislative process and you eliminate the department, the devil in the details that I would want to know, and I have not seen articulated yet, is what happens to the programs.
That's right.
Because even if the department disappears, IDEA is still the law of the United States. Even if the department disappears, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which requires states to administer reading and math assessments in grades 3 through 8 in order to get Title I funds, that's still the law of the United States. Some executive agency has to implement
that. Those things are codified in our statutes.
That's right. That's right. In federal education law is an interesting bag. So there's also been some concern about, could an incoming presidential administration implement their preferred standards for learning or preferred certification pathways for teachers? Those are state functions. Mm-hmm. And one thing that's interesting here, and I know this because I was working with the department when the Every Student Succeeds Act was passed in 2015, there is an express prohibition in federal law on the U.S. Secretary of Education directing, controlling, or influencing state standards. It is for lack of a better term, it's the Arne Duncan blowback clause in the Every Student Succeeds Act, because of concern that existed a decade ago around potential federal overreach in incentivizing states to adopt the Common Core state standards through the Race to the Top grant program. Mm-hmm. So now there's an express prohibition on a secretary being able to even influence state standards. So it's not as simple as just an incoming administration eliminating the department, and it means all the attached laws and policies and programs are eliminated. Those are statute passed by Congress. They have to be implemented. The question becomes, who implements them? And there are ways that pathways you could find to assign those programs elsewhere. So that's the devil in the detail I would want to know. A simple example that's not tied to K-12 is, at least directly, is the U.S. Department of Education is like the nation's fourth or fifth largest bank because of the student loan portfolio that is trillions of dollars. That is controlled by the U.S. Department of Education, which has a total workforce of 2,000 employees across all departments or all offices within the department. It is the smallest cabinet department by far, but it has the second largest portfolio of any department after the Treasury Department. So could you make the argument that the student loan portfolio could be transferred to the Treasury Department, who also manages U.S. savings bonds and Treasury securities? Yes, you could absolutely make that argument. And you could probably make a valid argument that the Treasury Department may be better equipped to manage that than a 2,000-person agency, most of which, I mean, of those 2,000 employees at the U.S. Department of Education, over half of them are attorneys. I love attorneys. I got several in my life. But I don't want attorneys managing my retirement portfolio. So where do these programs go, I think, is the questions that people should be asking, and they should be asking their members of Congress, because a lot of these potential actions are going to require congressional action.
Yeah, I mean, the way you laid it out, Patrick, is exactly what I was thinking about as I was seeing, the chatter online, which the chatter is coming from a very genuine place from our educators and our supporters of public education, but like you said, it's not a waving of the wand. It was that statement is a nice bumper sticker if you're running for president. But also it's important to realize that there are multiple steps that have to happen before something like that happens. And I hope you understood what he was sharing about those elements that many teachers and public education supporters are concerned about. Those things are codified in law. So even if the Department of Education is dissolved in some form or fashion, those things have to still take place. Now, you may think the Department of Education is better suited for that, and that's within your right. And then you can advocate that as you reach out to your members of the federal government, of the Congress. And so that is something we wanted to definitely address, Patrick.
And it's important for members of Congress to hear the specific programs that teachers are supporting. So you started this conversation by talking about special education. During the entire campaign, Mr. Trump has now ran for president 3 times. I've never heard a proposal to eliminate the federal guarantee of a free and appropriate public education for students with disabilities, the core of IDEA. I can tell you from serving on the National Assessment Governing Board, I met with members of Congress last year, including some individuals that are likely to be leadership members in the new U.S. Senate. They strongly support and they are animated by and focused on rights and protections for students with disabilities. So in talking with members of Congress, move beyond just the conversation around the department. And as you said, Craig, it's perfectly fine to advocate for the existence of a federal Department of Education. There's a strong case to be made that it matters for that to exist. But focus on the programs. What is it that it's delivering that is essential? Is it support for students with disabilities? Is it funding to impoverished areas of the country? Is it protection of civil rights for students regardless of race and gender and sexual orientation? Those are all programs within the department. So focus on those issues.
Yeah, and, students with disabilities, students of poverty, that is not on one side of the aisle.
No.
That is on, those students and those families are represented on both sides of the aisle. So we encourage you to use your voices to convey that to members of Congress who represent you. And you can find that out on our website, not our website, but the state government website, sestatehouse.gov. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can put your address in. If you're not sure who your member of Congress is, and put your address in, and it'll let you know that information.
And fun fact, our new landing page for our advocacy platform now has that information with a picture of them. I just looked at it this morning to see if it's been updated, and I saw Congressman Wilson's face smiling right at me on the screen because I live in the 2nd Congressional District. So PSTA members, you can hit that advocacy platform and it'll show you, and it's starting to update with the state races because I now show outgoing State Senator Mia McLeod, who was my senator and did not run for re-election, and now it says incoming State Senator Overture Walker. So shameless plug for our advocacy platform. Go check it out.
No, better plug. I love it. Before we go, Patrick, I do want to, the day after the election, I believe all of our members, and it became live on our website, the PSTA 2025 legislative agenda.
Yeah.
Anything you want to share?
I mean, if you're a PSTA member, read the agenda. That is reflective of your voice. It is probably the most comprehensive policy document of its sort in the state. And it's comprehensive because we're the largest association of professional educators, and what is in that agenda is shaped, informed, and driven by what our membership tells us. So we try our level best, if a member shares a concern, to get it in the agenda. If it's as big and sweeping as teachers need to be paid more, or if it's in the weeds of, I had a conversation with a state senator yesterday about teachers that are subject to the $10,000 earnings limitation and the need to get rid of that. But even if they don't, if you're under that $10,000 earnings cap right now, 9% of that $10,000 is going back into the state retirement system as a withholding, and you'll never see an increase in your retirement pay. And so I shared with the state senator, I was like, that's a huge disincentive for anybody to come back and work if 9% of your $10,000 is going away and you don't benefit from it.
Exactly.
That is an issue that a PSTA member directly reached out to us about. So read it. See if your voice is in there. If you see something we missed, let us know so we can advocate for it. This year, our acronym, because we love acronyms, is FOCUS, because we're staying focused on the policies necessary to advance educational opportunity for all students. So each of those letters is a core policy area that's necessary for students to succeed. The F is fully staffing every school. O is about optimization of time and resources. The C is comprehensive student supports. U is uniform opportunities for all. And the S is around safety and security in schools. And so those policies are designed to ensure every student in the state has the education that they need, and that every educator in this state has the working conditions that they deserve. And we've sent that out to every member of the legislature, sent out the last two today, since today was the day that the final two South Carolina Senate races have been called. In one case, it was Senator Fanning conceded. And let me just say one thing about state government, since this is where we're more comfortable in this space on this podcast anyway than getting into the federal government role that we touched on. So much attention was paid to the presidential election. Rightly, it's a big deal. But the legislature is going to look different in January. That the House will largely look the same. The Republicans picked up one seat in the House, but in the Senate, the Republicans flipped 4 current Democratic seats, which is going to give the Republican Party a supermajority in the South Carolina Senate. They will have 34 out of 46 seats. There will only be 12 Democrats in the South Carolina Senate. That is a significant barrier in terms of the filibuster rules of the Senate. It matters in terms of 2/3 for pushing out constitutional amendments to the people, because you need that threshold. And I would just encourage people, we say this at PSTA all the time, every vote matters. Sometimes, people roll my students certainly roll my eyes at me when I say that in my AP government class. But using Senator Fanning's election as an example.
So close.
Lost by 29 votes.
Yep.
And there were 54 write-ins.
Yep.
So, writing in is a democratic right. You can
Absolutely.
write somebody in, and I have no idea who those 54 write-in voters would have voted for if they had to choose between incoming Senator Stubbs or outgoing Senator Fanning. But those write-in voters can't say that their vote didn't matter, because the write-in number was literally more than the margin of victory. So just a reminder, get engaged in local and state elections and politics. You can have disproportionate impact on the outcome, and you can have influence over the individual elected because they're from your community. They live in the same area as you, and they want to hear from their constituents.
Great way to end, Patrick. And I'll share, we are ramping up for a very active legislative session. In addition to advocating for the items that you share with us in our legislative agenda, we have currently, this number could change, 25 scheduled legislative Hill Days. And I did the numbers, Patrick. We pretty much have 1/3 of all school districts represented that will have a representation at the General Assembly next year for a Hill Day. So we're excited about that. And last little fun note, I think Patrick should create a jingle around Focus. What do you think about that, Patrick?
Do I have to sing the jingle?
You have to sing. It's a jingle. Come on.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get ChatGPT to do that for me.
You still have to sing it, though.
Yeah. No, I'm going to get ChatGPT to sing it, too. It can do that, right?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if it
can
can't,
it cook me dinner tonight?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I have to buy a robot for that, but I'm not.
But
doing
it can tell you, if you tell it what's in your fridge, it will tell you what to cook.
That's pretty scary.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
But it's probably better than whatever I would have cooked. So go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that. It's been another impactful episode of the PSTA podcast. I'm Craig King, your host, and I'll see you next time.